Welcome back. This is Arise News. You're watching the morning show with me, Biola Alabi. Investment manager Motunrayo Ade-Famoti and Tolu Dima Okojie are still here with me to talk more about personal financing, financial literacy, and investment. So before we went on the break, Motunrayo, I was talking to you about the fact that there's a lot more financial literacy in the marketplace now. If you look at the marketplace 10 years ago and you look at Nigeria today, there are more conversations happening around being more financially literate. Do you believe, and Tolu, I'm asking you the same question as we talked, do you believe that that is translating into more investments, especially also a woman's attitude towards investments changing because of this education?
I don't really see. I remember when I started, I thought everybody knew investment. And then when I went to it, I found that a lot of people didn't know about investment. And that's why I started something like a give back. I do trainings, I do mentorship on investment and finance and so on. But I think that there's a huge gap, especially women. I think that we're kind of disadvantaged. I think that even the best, when it comes to investment, the best they know there is go buy treasury bills. And treasury bills is great, but treasury bills is below inflation rates at the moment. So the value of the money is actually dwindling right in front of you.
What are T-bills at now? The last I spoke to someone, I think it was at 15 or something.
No, I was saying 12.
It's at 12 now.
Yes,
12,
11, 12, not 15. You know, so it's great because your money is
guaranteed.
Safe.
Yes,
it's guaranteed, but it's not really an investment that can pay you long term. You know, it's a bit like a pension plan.
Yes.
You can't pay long term, so you need you need to diversify your investment, take a little bit of risk. So I think there's a lot of financial education gap that we need to fill up.
Yes, we're starting it. The conversations are happening, but it's not translating as much into action. Again, I find that a lot of people still don't have enough knowledge to understand the risk. Because when people hear risk, the first thing they're thinking is, I just want it guaranteed. And if you're still taking guaranteed returns, then like you said, you're not really building wealth. What you're doing is you're staying safe. And it's great to start that way, but the question is, how long do you want to play on the sidelines? You need to get in the game if you really want to build the wealth that you say is important to you.
When you talk about wealth, I think one of the things for me in Nigeria that the stories you hear growing up, the stories you hear every time is sort of these people that was rich, they're no longer rich. There's always sort of these grace to grass stories, which I was fortunate to make a film about. You were just saying something about that, which is it's really about how do you preserve wealth and how do you transfer wealth? Why do you believe that this is such a difficult thing in Africa? In Africa, it's actually an African-wide problem. It's not just a Nigeria problem.
Yes.
Why do you believe that we haven't been able to preserve wealth and transfer wealth as a people?
I think you're absolutely right. I did estate plan for 3 years here, and before then I'd done corporate trusteeship in the UK. And that problem is epidemic. It's almost as if you look at the statistic, only about 5% of businesses actually survive the founder, so it goes to the next generation. I think the #1 problem is education. I think we've become a consuming generation, not a producing generation. So typically, you teach your children how to spend rather than how to produce wealth. So by the time you have the first generation who are the earners, they've worked hard, they move it on to the next generation who are the complete spenders. And then by the time the third generation comes, the money is finished and the cycle begins all over again. If you look at it statistically, wealth does not pass the third generation. Only one man has successfully passed wealth past the third generation in this country, the Dantata family.
Yes, that's true.
That's the only person. Yes. So you can see that, and I believe the problem is education. So you are teaching your children inadvertently to be spenders, not earners. So whatever helped you, gave you, which is normally somebody really coming from a poor background, having the tenacity, working hard. Whatever gave you that, you didn't pass it on to your children. So it's all about the summers abroad. It's all about the iPhones and all these things.
I agree.
And then that's what they learn. They don't learn to be. If you apply the Jewish method, which starts their children very young, before they're 10 years old, they're already working in their father's companies, it can be a different turnaround. But
so there's an opportunity there for us.
Huge opportunity.
So you were shaking your head vigorously when she was talking about that, so I just wanted to get your take on that.
I mean, it's exactly the same. Even from, like I said, with my mom now, she's built a business, she sold it off. She wasn't even thinking, is this something we can get to a state that we can transfer to Tolu and her siblings and whatnot? It was just like, I just want to make it good, and if I have something left over to give the kids, I'm good. But I mean, there's nothing better than you can give your kids something that's working and they know how to work it. People still laugh when they're hearing that someone abroad is saying he's passing on half of his wealth to charities because he's trying to say that I need my kids to sweat it. But what most people are thinking is, if they won't suffer, let them not suffer now. But you don't realize is that it's not just about they have the money. If you're just spending all that money, then a time is going to come when it's going to end. So it's really, really, I mean, I'm a testament to that.
And then also, I mean, even though they're passing on half their wealth, the other half is quite substantial, and there are quite a number, I mean, there's a number of trusts and endowments for these, for the great-great-grandchildren.
Correct.
And I also think one of the biggest problems is I think we don't have legislation to support, you know,
the transfer of wealth.
Transfer of wealth, that's the truth as well. You find out that in places like America, they're complex trusts they set up so that the children don't have 100% control.
Exactly.
They set up family offices and so on. And so you have Ford Foundation still surviving, Rockefeller Foundation still surviving, because they're people, money managers actually sit on the board, and not just the children. We don't have that of a strong foundation. Few families have it here, but we don't have it here.
How does that become norm? How does that become like the norm? How do we make that, how do we start to institute that into our businesses?
Let me give you an example. Until we fix our land registry system in Lagos, I don't see how it can work. You know, the land registry is huge. A lot of title documentations are not perfected. So whoever has your CFO has the property. That can be the case. It doesn't matter whether you have the equivalent of CFO in America or UK. Have it all you want. You can do anything with it because there's a process that it has to go through. And we don't have that. As long as we don't have that, then the kids can find a copy of it and sell it. Has been my experience in practice, whereby the kids found a copy of the CFO and they sold it. And although we were trustees, there was nothing. Would we sue the family? Or would we sue the children? There's nothing we can do. And so, before you know what, you have a situation whereby the children themselves are stripping off the asset. And once you strip off the entire asset under the trust, you have nothing. What are you managing? So I think legislation is a huge part of it. And as long as we have problems with the land registry system, I don't see
the second person, I think, I mean, Ade, she said it, she's correct in that. The second thing I think we can also do is, even as an individual, what kind of mindset do you have? Do you have the, oh, I want my kids to inherit, and because what most people are looking forward to is once I inherit, we sell it, share it, eat it, and that's what happens. You know, you're almost like, what happened to you? I thought your dad had #1 billion worth of property. You take your share. So even we as parents or custodians are not actually instituting this knowledge of, can we grow this? What can we do beyond just we want to dissipate that wealth? So if we're looking at how we can work together and say, how can we expand our wealth so that we can continue to benefit from this the same way our parents did? So you can actually create that. My dad is trying to do that. I know a few clients that actually have instituted something like that. So like the lady passed on and she has a trust set up here that still pays her grandkids school fees. You know, so it's not just the parents are doing that. And she's saying, she said, by the way, I don't want you sharing this wealth. If you share this wealth, then there's going to be a penalty. Half of it has to go elsewhere. So it's in your interest to actually keep it together. So that's some of the things that you can do as individuals to make sure that you're actually passing out that knowledge and you're letting people see the value of you doing that. Because more times than not, you sharing the wealth, there are very few people that have little to show for the portion of wealth they collected from their parents.
Wow. So how soon can people start teaching how soon should people start teaching their kids about money and about producing, not just sort of spending?
I started teaching my son at 6 years old. I love Rich Dad Poor Dad books, Robert Kiyosaki. I made him read them. And we talk about it. Oh, absolutely. He understands the idea of buying a property, renting it. He understands the idea of stocks, and he understands everything. And you need to catch them young. You know, buy them I bought him a piggy bank when he was about 2 years old. Those kind of things, and then you start to build upon it. You let them understand that money is not in my bag. Money is me going to work for it and bringing money. You know, I give him very little pocket money for school. You know, those kind of things, you have to be extremely frugal with them because they hear. And with the schools they're going to, it's all about, where do they go for summer and all of those things. So you have to be very careful at home when they come back home. That's reality. You have to balance it. So you have to start very, very young. I sometimes wonder that if I started earlier, maybe I would have even gone for
You're like, yes, you're like, I wouldn't even
but you're buying properties at 20. I said, yeah, but even
that
though
means
I
you could have started earlier.
Yeah, well, I wish I didn't start it earlier. Maybe I wouldn't have made so many mistakes I made. You know, so I think that you can't, as soon as they can talk, teach them about money.
Thank you.
When you look at people investing, because I think this is such a the challenge with investing is it's intimidating as well. How do you break it down to your clients so that they don't feel so intimidated by the fact that you can start as young as 6, you can start small, you can start to understand how to have a relationship with money? How do you do that, Tolu?
So that's why I like that where I'm coming from. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a finance guru in the sense that I didn't actually go through the banking and finance and whatnot. So what I do is I simplify it as simple as, so when we buy this and you sell this, what's the difference? It's like a no-brainer. We really try and simplify it to this point that my child can understand. My child now knows what money is. My kids are 5 and 4. And when they see money, know, oh, this is something that, like you said, they come straight to me like, this is valuable. And you'll get to the point where they're having chores and they're saying that, okay, I have a chore, and when I do this, I get this benefit, and it's in addition to something I want to buy. So that's how we actually simplify investments for people as well. We're trying to make it as simple as ABC. So buying a property, for me, investment is even business. I always tell people more often than not. If you're a business person, and most entrepreneurs get this, investment is a business. It's in the business of providing accommodation services if it's real estate. It's the business of providing loan services if you're talking about, like you said, debt financing, treasury bills, and all that. So I just realized for my clients that once I start putting in the context of business, it becomes simple because they're already in that space. So we really try and break it down A, B, C, and in the language that they already speak. So it's easier to sell for them.
Do you guys find that it's difficult for people to pay for services? Because that's also another thing in Nigeria, paying for services is something that is new and a culture that we're now obviously getting into. Do you find that people are open to paying for services?
Oh, absolutely. They don't want to pay for, nobody wants to pay for service because there's like, service is not
It's
something
not tangible.
it's not tangible.
Yes,
you don't hold into it. So
it's like, so you just advised me on something so now I pay you for that? Like, we could be having coffee, like, come on.
And I come from a world whereby we used to charge per hour. Yes. My clients an hour. That's all we do is talk and listen, and we charge you for that.
Lawyers and therapists.
Yeah, exactly. So we just, we can inquire for 2 hours, we still send you a bill. But I think people need to move beyond that because I did a training not so long ago, and yes, the training was sold out, but I remember I had to really convince people to come, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You could have bought 25,000 naira, and it was really it wasn't a train that made money on. It was just a give back. We just paid for the building and lunch, and they knew that's what we're paying for, and it was so reluctant, and I was just smiling because it's easy for you to say, oh, I do all of this. I didn't start doing it. I had to invest thousands and tens of thousands into my education. And if you want to go from here to there, you need to invest in yourself as well. So I think it's very difficult for people to understand that. Very, very difficult. They don't want to pay for investment education, but yet they want the returns. I don't see how.
I mean, I just had a workshop yesterday and it was the exact same problem. But what I find is you get to a point where you're doing it yourself and you really begin to understand the value of having your financial advisors, legal advisors, and all that. In fact, one of my participants was saying that, oh, the rich people have advisors. And I was like, exactly. You think there's a service they're providing, but you'll be surprised also to tell you that, oh, my advisors have been with me for 20 years, 15 years and whatnot. So it's actually, you get to a point where you've done those things, you failed. I mean, I tell people that it's easy for you to say real estate, just buy and sell. It's when you've done it and you've lost the property, you realize that you missed out. And then you're more alert and willing. Unfortunately, sometimes we need to be, we almost need to make a loss before we're like, okay, I need to backtrack here. What did I do wrong? And then you go looking for the people who can actually guide you and help you to do the right thing.
So I'm going to ask you about MMM because that was a big thing that happened last year. Why do you, and there are more of those. There are people that are always trying to double, Ponzi schemes that are always trying to do, there's so many different things. Why do you think people continue to fall prey to these things, even though the warning signs are everywhere?
I would have said lack of financial education, but my answer is greed. Somebody comes to you and, I say to people, MMM was returning about, I think, 30% a month or something like that, and it was guaranteed. That's the number one warning sign for any investment. A friend of mine called me recently for another one. They were trading on the market, and they were promising returns about 90-something%. I'm like, in the same market I'm trading on. What stocks are you trading on? Come on, I day trade, I do everything. So tell me, what are you investing in? It's a warning sign. One thing I always say to my client, I never guarantee them any particular return. The returns I guarantee are the lower end return, which is bonds. Because I know exactly bonds, except United States disappears. The bonds will always be safe. And so far we know they have excellent ratings. You have to be very careful when people start. So I say to people, ask them questions. What are they investing in? what market? Okay, New York Stock Exchange. Okay, what kinds of stocks? Because we have, we have NASDAQ stocks, we have technological stocks, pharmaceutical stocks. I won't touch those kind of stocks because some stocks, because they're very volatile. I love techie stocks. I don't like this stock. So ask them questions. Okay, is it mutual funds? Is it ETFs? What kinds of ETFs are they trading on? Okay, is it European? Is it Asian market? Okay, I know Asian is emerging and is doing a lot of great returns, but what are they putting their money on? Are they index funds? What types of index funds? What are the mixes? Those are information you can find out easily online.
Yes.
So I ask them questions, and then even with all of that, once they start guaranteeing you, it's impossible. Nobody can guarantee the market. It can go up, it can go down. From training and from experience, that you begin to kind of see, I'm more of a technical investor than a fundamental one. So you see the charts and you kind of follow the signs. But with that, I never guarantee. So anything that's guaranteeing you,
be careful.
Another thing is huge returns.
Yes, huge returns, yeah.
Be careful.
So when you start to hear those 30% returns, and
every week. So I mean, you should just describe the classic behavior of the investor. The person wants to be informed. They want to know how. Most of that, the personalities, the spendthrift is already excited that as long as you can give it to me, take it. They're usually coming from a place of desperation. The other two, because of his fearful nature, might say, let me just try a little bit or not at all. So usually because of that behavior, they restrict. Remember, the person's not even doing anything at all. So again, this is how the behavior affects. Then the mix manager might decide, oh, I think it's something we have to take risk because the person already has an appetite for risk.
Yes.
Again, depending on the situation at that time, you might find a lot of mismanagement. I mean, I heard of persons actually selling off part or all of their businesses for MMM. Okay, so yes, unfortunately. Wow. So again, this is how your behavior, your lifestyle, your stage in life can actually also influence how you respond to investment opportunities. The same person who is in a certain situation can say, you know what, I think I should be worried. But when you're desperate, your business just failed, you don't have any backup plan, someone just died, and you're more desperate, and then all of these things, it's really greed, but for you right there and then is, God is trying to help me. So this is, your behavior too can actually also influence how you respond to this thing. And you find again that the more informed you are, you know the questions to ask. I always tell people, look at Dragon's Den. Have you noticed how they ask 2-3 questions that are already at the bottom of what you're offering? It's information. But if you don't have that information and saying, you're telling me too much stories, you're going to do yourself a disservice at the end of the day. And that's why you get caught by the person who is marketing to that part of your heart, that greed part, that you want to be a billionaire in 1 year. Let's do it.
Exactly.
So we're going to be wrapping up, but I just want to say thank you guys so much. If there's one piece of advice you can give people at home on starting to invest, thinking about investing, what would that be, Motunrayo?
I think I'll invest in financial education. If I have $100,000.
Invest in education first.
Yes. If I have 100,000 naira, I'll put 90,000 in my education. Absolutely.
You actually said something earlier, which I wanted to pick up on, which was that you volunteered at a real estate agency.
Yes.
There's all this debate. I saw some conversations going on about internships earlier and people paying out, people not paying internships. What is is that a good investment to take an unpaid internship?
It's one of the best investments. Gift. Honestly, for 4 years, this is somebody I'd passed the New York bar. I'd done all my exams in UK to become a solicitor. After then, I worked for 4 years for free. Yes, I had a mountain of credit card bills, but I worked for free.
So that was that 90% investment in yourself.
Absolutely. And those years were one of the best, because at the end of the day, somebody who wasn't paying you, they kind of have pity on you and they say, okay, fine, let me just teach you something. And I learned tons. I was on the war front, just learning, getting so much information.
And sometimes people allow you in more because they're not
They allow me in, and then they'll buy you Chinese. And sometimes they actually give you money on the side, because they kind of feel bad that this girl is not working. But I think in this culture, this part of the world, people see it as being taken advantage of. No.
I'm going to have to include you in that conversation on Twitter. And then Tolu, last word on how to start, what to do today.
I think what you need to do is, as long as you have bills to pay, you need to make investment one of those. Okay, so every month, as long as you have to pay school fees, you have to pay rent, you have to make sure that you have an investment account that you're putting something into. If you're going to pay tax and you're going to pay church tithe, please at least pay something to yourself for investment.
Fantastic. Thank you, ladies. So Monday is almost around the corner. I hope this has been great advice for you to take into the week. That brings us to the end of the show this morning. I'm Biola Alabi. Thank you for joining me, my guest, and thank you for watching at home. Goodbye. Thank you, ladies.